Hello, and welcome to the Audio Time Capsule, episode 4. For those of you new to the show, I'm comedian Simon Kane, and this is the podcast where I bring on a guest, get them to leave 20 questions, and then a year later bring them back on to answer them. I then edit it so they're talking to their past self. All past voices will sound like this, and all future voices will sound like this. To give you an example, here is a question that I recorded just before meeting up with today's guest. Hello, Simon of the future. Did you ever find that Yankee Candle that you ordered off Amazon? It seems to have gone missing, and you rang them yesterday and they said they delivered it 2 days ago, and you still you can't find it. Where is it, if it even exists in your world? Well, Simon of the past, I did find it in the end. So normally what Amazon do is they leave you a little card saying, we came but you weren't here, come collect it from the post office, or they'll give it to a neighbour to sign for. Pretty standard procedure. This delivery person didn't do either of that. They just hid it in the bushes next to my front door. Obviously I didn't see it, because why would I be looking in the bushes for a candle? So I complained to Amazon and they sent me a brand new one, and this time the new delivery person made my neighbour sign for it. So I got 2 candles for the price of 1. It's pretty sweet. Thank you very much for the reminder. This episode is about the musician and songwriter Frank Turner. He has been touring non-stop around the world with his brand of self-titled Campfire Punk Rock, building a massive audience and going on tour with some amazing bands. We get into that in the podcast. I don't want to step too much on the toes of the questions that have already been asked. If you'd like to listen to some of Frank's music, you can find it on Spotify, iTunes, his website, YouTube, everywhere really. And also he's about to go on tour, so if you'd like to find some details of that, there are some links in the show notes. If you're new here, please do remember to hit the subscribe button. If you're old here, please do remember to give us an honest review in iTunes. And either way, do consider joining the Facebook group. It's called the Audio Time Capsule and it's on Facebook, obviously. But for now, let's open the time capsule of Frank Turner.
Hello, my name is Frank Turner. The date today is the 15th of November 2016. I'm at Shepherd's Bush Empire in London before the Peaceful Noise concert, and I'm recording questions to ask myself in a year's time. The idea of asking myself questions in the future is quite weird. I think it's quite a cool one. It's funny, I get interviewed a lot, and there are moments in my life when I see interviews from a few years ago and I sort of slightly wonder what on earth I was talking about with some of the stuff I'm saying. So, this is a chance for me to sort of actually have that conversation with myself.
I'm Frank Turner. It is the 25th of November 2017. I am backstage at Ulu in London. I'm actually borrowing Josh Homm's dressing room. And tonight is A Peaceful Noise 2, which is this concert to memorialise my friend Nick Alexander and everybody else who died at the Bataclan attacks in Paris 2 years ago. And we are doing this audio time capsule, and I have absolutely no memory whatsoever of what any of the questions I asked myself a year ago are, so I'm kind of intrigued, and we'll see how we go.
How was Show 2000 at Rock City, and in particular, how did the guitar solos in the Taylor set go? I'm playing guitar for my support band that night, and I have to play 3 guitar solos, and I'm quite worried about it because I can't really play guitar solos. So,
Show 2000, which is still in my head, feels like it happened quite recently. It was, in fact, in December, so it's nearly a year ago now as well. It was phenomenal. The atmosphere in the room was tangibly electric, and I was exhausted. It was the end of the year. I actually went and had one of those rock doc shots that you get where they inject you with B vitamins in your bum, and it sort of helps. It was the last show of the year, and I never usually do that kind of thing, but I just needed to be in good spirit and voice for the gig. The gig was amazing. The thing I always remember from Show 2000 is that the crowd sung along with the mandolin riff at the start of Losing Days, which has never happened before or since. So that was pretty cool. We filmed it for a DVD, which I have then watched 1,000 times because I did the audio edit on that. And it was just a magical evening. Rock City is a very special place to me. I got a tattoo that night that says 2000 Rock City on it, and it was everything I'd hoped it would be. The guitar solos in the Taylor set, they went okay, is probably the best way of putting it. It was magical having the Taylors play. They are a band that I loved when I was first starting to make kind of more songwriting, acoustic country music. They were one of my biggest influences, and they were just friends who also played in London and who've sort of been forgotten by history in a way that feels unjust to me. So I got them to reunite for show 2000, and their guitarist has moved to Canada, so I volunteered to play guitar. The show 2000 went quite well. We then played again on my birthday, which is December 28th. I thought it would be a nice birthday party to have the Taylors play again. They went particularly badly that night because I was absolutely hammered by the time we took the stage. So my memory of my birthday is them going very well, and the reports from the audience that they went extremely badly. But show 2000, they went all right.
How was the American tour with Felix Hagen, and in particular the Boston show at the end of it? How did that all work out? Did everybody love Felix? I've got a replacement keys player for a tour next year for the reason. Actually, next question, if all right.
The American tour went great. Felix absolutely stepped up. He learned all of Matt's parts. Matt's the regular keys player in my band. And probably, with no disrespect to anybody else, probably the hardest person to step in for because his parts are so complex. Felix absolutely nailed everything. We had a couple of rehearsals in the States before the tour started. He'd been practicing over Christmas, and he nailed it, and he was great, and the audience loved him. And I can't thank him enough for doing what he did. It has to be said that the first time we practiced with Matt back in the band again, it was kind of like scratching an itch that you didn't know you had. Like, Felix didn't play anything wrong, but there are just nuances of playing that every individual has. And what was interesting about that for me was that my band and I spend so much time on the road and so much time in each other's company that there are days when you sort of forget that you're friends as well as colleagues. And when Matt came back, it was just kind of awesome. Everyone was just really happy to see our friend again, and not just musically but personally. So Felix was wonderful, but it's lovely to be back to the original, the OG lineup. What was the other part of the question? Oh, and the Boston show, yes. The last show of the tour was at the Agganis Arena in Boston, and it was great. I mean, it was, we did a bit of kind of PR chicanery of referring to it as the American Wembley, because the Wembley Arena show we did back in 2012 was my first arena headline show in the UK, and it was a transformative moment in my career. I'm not sure that the Boston show was actually quite the same as Wembley. It was just a really cool, really big show at the end of a tour, but it was great, and Boston remains our home on that side of the Atlantic, and it was a lovely evening was had by all.
How are Matt, Nazir and Anna and their baby, and what sex is the baby, and is everybody getting on well?
So Matt, the reason that Matt stepped out of the band was that Matt had a baby with Anna, his wonderful girlfriend, and the baby is a boy called Morgan, and Matt is enjoying the vagaries of parenthood. They're doing very well. He does that thing, I don't have kids, everybody I know who has kids does this thing of saying, oh my God, it's absolutely the greatest thing in the world, and then proceeds to tell a series of stories which seem to point to an opposite conclusion to that, mostly about not sleeping and vomit. And Matt's hardcore involved in not sleeping and vomit at the moment, but Morgan, who I've met a couple of times, is an absolute sweetheart. He looks a lot like his dad, and they're very happy.
Fucking hell. This is the big one coming up next. It's like, what state is album 7 in? Did you stick to your guns? Is it still a concept record? Did you do everything that you could to make it everything that it should be?
That's going to fry my brain when I hear that question in a year's time.
I'll tell you that. I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting question at this point.
Well, that is quite an interesting question, and much has changed in the last year, and it's interesting to me to hear that's where my head was still at a year ago. So basically, I wrote a concept record of songs about women who've been ignored by the historical record, and I finished writing it, and I then shelved it because I just felt like the world, as it currently stands, is demanding comment that's slightly more contemporary than songs about women from 18th century Paris or whatever, as much as that is an important thing for me to write a song about. So I actually, after much umming and ahhing, and I can tell that when I recorded that question I was in the middle of changing my mind. So I went off and I wrote a whole new suite of songs, and the album is recorded. We were in Texas for 2 sessions over the summer. It's not mixed yet. One song's been released, There She Is, came out as part of the songbook collection, which came out yesterday, in fact. But I'm extremely excited about it. I think part of my nervousness a year ago was that there would be something less integral about ditching the obscurantist concept record. I haven't ditched the record, it's going to come out, but I think that the suite of songs that I've written since then are both better, well, maybe better, but certainly more to the point of what's going on in the world right now. I've kind of ended up writing a kind of political dance pop record, which is sort of calibrated to probably irritate everybody at the same time. So my Twitter account will be a lovely place to be when that album finally comes out. But I'm very excited about it. I think it's good songwriting, and the arrangements are radically different from anything I've ever done before, and I'm excited about that.
How's the back? Have you been keeping up with the exercise regime that you should have done? And how much pain are you in day to day doing shows?
My back's in pretty good shape. I had a ping out, a sort of incident, however you want to call it, when I was moving house earlier this year, because I got over enthusiastic about carrying boxes around the place. But they happen periodically and they suck, but you just kind of get on with your life. I have actually 2 weeks ago, as of recording now, started running, which is something I've been sort of threatening to do for a long time. I have friends who are evangelical about the benefits of running. And you know, they're not all sort of tiresome fitness fanatic people. They're people who I can identify with in lifestyle terms, he said, in the most evasive way possible, but who all swear by it. So I'm now 2 weeks into running. I did a run this morning with a hangover, which was a first, and it actually felt great at the time and then felt crushingly awful afterwards. But I'm sort of like on a bit of a fitness kick at the moment, and I need to quit smoking, and if I was doing this again, this might be one of the questions coming up. Have you quit smoking? The answer is no. But no, I feel good. Yeah, I feel good.
Are you still smoking cigarettes?
Well. Yes, I am. I have cut down some, but I am still smoking, and that's terrible. And I'm sorry, old me, and indeed girlfriend, and indeed everybody. It's a terrible habit for a singer. But such is life.
How's the love life? Is everything still working out the way that it was a year ago? Because a year ago, it was peachy keen, which is true.
The love life went through a bit of a convulsion in the middle of the year, but I'm happy to say that I came out the other side of it. We came out the other side of it in a much better, stronger place. And we have moved house, and we live in a wonderful new house, and life is excellent. I'm very happy and settled with my wonderful partner. So, good.
This is a more profound one for me. I mean, again, we'll get into this. How are your relationships with the Sleeping Souls, both collectively and individually, and what is the state of play with that whole situation right now? That could be a very political question in a year's time. Or not. I mean, I don't know.
I'm pleased to say that relations with the Sleeping Souls are very good. We made the new album together. The guys from the band came out to Texas one by one to work on the record, which was great, both for me and for them. I think everyone got to focus on their parts individually. And after Matt's little hiatus from the band in January for having a kid, it was really lovely to have him back again. And I think, I feel like we're together and stronger than ever. Everyone's very excited about next year. The new record is not one that we really know how to play because we made it in the studio, so we're going to have an interesting time doing a lot of rehearsing, which is something we don't habitually do very often. So we're going to do a lot of rehearsing early next year to get the record together. But yeah, everyone's in a good place. I'm excited about next year.
What is the state of play with the United Kingdom and the European Union, and do you feel vindicated in your opinions about the situation from a year ago? Are we looking at a more or less liberal world at this point in our history?
Well, I think the central fact of British politics in 2017 has been the almost total collapse of anything approaching a governing class. I think that I have watched with great dismay at the extremely low caliber of politicians that we seem to have generated as a society. I think there is, on some levels, I think there's an argument that a democratic society tends to throw up the politicians they deserve. I hope that's not true of Britain in 2017, because across the board, I think they're awful. I think that there is something I spend quite a lot of time thinking about, and not to any practical or efficacious end, is the fact that I think there is something broken in our society. If you look at the caliber of people who rose to the top of politics in the post-war era, or indeed the pre-war era, whatever else one might say about them, they were some of the smartest people of any given society. They were smart, they were coherent, they had coherent ideologies and views of the world and that kind of thing. Regardless whether or not you agree with them, Attlee versus Churchill, that's two intellectual heavyweights right there. To stand up now and have, Corbyn versus May it's depressing, the absolute degeneration of our political culture that represents. I mean, as far as Europe and everything goes, I think I'm extremely concerned because I think that nobody on either side seems to be making any particularly effective arguments about a future vision for our country, and there is a time limit on these things, and I worry about that a lot. I think it is possible to be optimistic about Brexit, which is a fact. I think it's extremely tiresome, people who are constantly trying to rerun the referendum. It happened, deal with it, it's a fact of political life. I think there are optimistic visions for it. I just don't think anybody's doing anything that's actually going to make those come true currently, which is sad.
Have you got your neck tattooed yet? And if you did, how did that conversation with the missus go down?
I do not have my neck tattooed yet, and I have essentially been told in no uncertain terms that neck tattoos and going out with my girlfriend are two mutually exclusive positions to hold in life. I mean, there's part of me that wants to just go and do it, and because then it's done and sort of call her bluff on it, but that doesn't seem like a particularly adult way to engage in a relationship, so I haven't got my neck tattooed, but I do. My most recent tattoo, I've sort of slowed down a bit on tattoos, partly because I'm running out of space and partly because I'm just picking my battles for my remaining space. But I got one of my favourite tattoos. I have a portrait tattoo of Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer in their role as Mulligan and O'Hare with My Rose Has Left Me. And it is basically the best tattoo in the world. It's on my leg, and I know this is terrible radio, but I'm pulling it up right now. And there they are. I'm pleased to say that Bob Mortimer... Reeves and Mortimer are my favourite thing in the world. There are not adjectives enough in the English language for me to express how much I adore everything they've ever done. And I've got all of it, I'm pretty sure. Every now and again I discover a little something I didn't have before, like I found a whole bunch of stuff from Vic Reeves from The Word the other day, which I didn't have, which was his first appearance as Vic Reeves. So I'm an obsessive fan, essentially. And yeah, Bob Mortimer spotted the tattoo on Twitter, because I put it on my Instagram and my Twitter and everything, and sort of commented, right, okay, that's flattering. But, you know, I adore them, and if tattoos are supposed to mark one's character, personality and taste, then that works very well for me.
Have you spoken to your dad yet? That's a heavy question, if ever there was one.
I have, actually, and in sad news, my father's twin brother has terminal cancer, which is gutting because he's always been my sort of consolation dad, if you like. But he sort of said that he was tired of me and my father being at odds, and he would like us to, if not reconcile, at least be in the same room. So we have been in the same room, and it was in many ways less dramatic than I thought it was going to be, but it was also, it didn't really fix anything. I think I'm less angry about it now than I was a year ago, but it's a non-relationship.
What's happening with Eating Before Swimming? Have you ceased to be a lazy dickhead and actually sent Chris some material? And if so, how did it work out? And is there a record coming out with that? It's a side project that I'm being very slow at working on. And actually on that level, have you got around to making another Mongol Horde record yet? And if so, did you keep your promise to yourself to be yet more gloves off with the lyrics than you were the first time around?
Side projects, right. Well, Eating Before Swimming has moved on a pace. We have now passed the halfway point of an album about 5 years after thinking up the idea. We've got 6 songs finished now, and we're going for 10, so there's progress for you. And I think it is turning into a genuinely interesting project. It's me and a friend making some seriously out there music. It's kind of easy listening folk and drum and bass and noise covers. It's a very odd project, and I'm not sure how many people are going to get it or appreciate it, and I don't care, because it is art in its purest form as far as I'm concerned. So that is moving on. I mean, I could do this audio time capsule again, and I would probably still not finish it in a year's time, but it will get done, and I'm excited about that. Mongol Horde is very much on my mind currently, because we have just announced a new Mongol Horde tour in January, which is at some slightly bigger venues, and they appear to be selling out, which is exciting. But we have not done any new music because we haven't played together since 2014, and we need to remember how the songs go between now and January. But I'm excited about the tour, and I think that it's kind of giving us all a kick up the arse to engage with that project intellectually again. So I can't answer the question about lyrics, but I hope, again, that, I mean, Mongol Horde is, the style of writing is very stream of consciousness. An awful lot of it's first draft, which is something I never do in my regular solo writings. So it's a lot of fun to just refuse to self-censor, and hope I will keep that up.
Oh yeah. How's Donald Trump doing? I mean, I'm intrigued. He's a piece of shit, but who knows? We'll see about that.
Unfortunately, Donald Trump is still the President of the United States, much to my dismay. He hasn't improved or gained any sort of statesman-like bearing. He's been tweeting about how he should have left people in jail because they didn't thank him enough on release, which is just, again, I mean, I was chatting earlier about the degeneration of our political classes. I mean, he is the obvious leading light of that process. I not only is he still the president, if I was a betting man, with the way things currently stand, I would put money on him winning a second term, simply because I think that the American Democratic Party they are repeating the mistakes that led to the election of Donald Trump. They're doubling down on all the things they did that allowed Donald Trump to win an election. And the divide in American society is something that I find extremely troubling. I think that a world without America as a kind of as a moral and military leader will be considerably worse than one with, and I'm worried about that.
How is your country guitar playing? Because you've been promising yourself that you're going to get better at learning Mel Haggard licks and Chet Atkins licks, and I want to know if you've actually kept up with that idea and have actually been practicing like you promised you would and improving as a musician, because that shit's important.
Oh, screw you, me of a year ago. I haven't really done masses of that. I've been busy. I mean, it's not like I've been idle, but I haven't actually done much in the way of learning new country licks recently, and more's the pity. I mean, I think that there is some guitar work on the recorded but not yet mixed 7th album, which is above and beyond any guitar work that I've recorded before, and I'm very happy with that. But specifically, I really would love to become a decent country guitar player, and I have yet to do that, so sorry.
How did things work out with Blink?
The Blink tour was absolutely wonderful. It was a lovely time. Spending a couple of weeks hanging out with my old pal Max Skiba was a joy. The other guys in the band, Mark and Travis, were lovely as well, as to the extent that we saw any of them, which wasn't much. But it was great. We hadn't done a support tour in the UK in a long time, and I feel like the Sleeping Souls, my band, and I sort of cut our teeth and sort of came together as a band supporting people in the States. And it's a particular skill set that I think is one of our strongest suits, and one that we hadn't deployed in the UK for a very long time. So it was really fun to just kind of walk out in front of these packed audiences every night and just headbutt the audience in the face repeatedly until they started paying attention. And I think there were a lot of people at those shows who didn't know who I was, or who maybe had heard the name but never got around to checking it out, or indeed people who maybe had the first 2 albums and hadn't paid attention since then. And it was really lovely to kind of gather some people together again. So it was a really fun tour.
How was the reception of the film? Did it go? Was it everything that you and Ben hoped that it would be?
The film went well. It was odd having that much personal information released into the world. That's something that instinctively I am at least cautious about usually. I mean, the point of the film was for it to be revealing, and there would have been no point in making it if it had not been revealing. So it was. But it went very well. I think people really enjoyed it. We did an American kind of cinema tour for it, which happened just at the moment that my personal life was in the doldrums. So I don't remember very much of that, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, it seemed to go well. I think people really enjoyed it. And yeah, I think Ben did a great piece of work.
Have you called your mother?
Wow. Sarcastic, spiky me from a year ago. I have. My mum's coming to... I've just moved house, and my mum is coming to inspect my new house, as she is wont to do in her motherly way. It's like a state visit. I'm definitely going to do some hoovering before she arrives. My mother is coming on a state visit next week, so that'll be exciting.
So when you look back over the last year, from November 2016 till now, which presumably will be November 2017, what thing that has happened makes you the most happy?
That's a good question, old me. I mean, I've got 2 immediate answers to that. One of which is that I'm really, really excited about the new album. The thing that I decided to do after we recorded these questions was to, having decided not to do the lyrically obscurantis thing, I decided to take a hard stylistic left-hand turn and to really get into new sonic territory with the new record. And I think, I mean, the album's not mixed yet, so it's hard to say with certainty, but I think it's been a success. There's a lot of kind of beats and loops and synths and dance music influences on there, which is new territory for me as someone making music. I mean, I listened to a lot of that kind of music, but and it was nerve-wracking to do that, and I think it went well, and I think I pushed it in the right direction. I'm proud of the album. And the other thing is just that this sounds entirely sentimental, but I'm very happy in my personal life, and this year I worked through some long-standing issues in my life in order to make that relationship work, and it has left me a much happier person.
If you could go back to the time when you were recording this at Shepherd's Bush in 2016, what would you add or take away as far as questions go? What didn't you see coming?
Blimey. Well, I mean, it's sort of hard to say, really, as counterfactual. I mean, I would ask more questions about the album, because that is probably the thing that has changed the most in terms of what I was expecting to happen a year ago. I would take away the question about smoking, because I'm annoyed with myself that I have failed on that level. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a reasonably good set of questions. He said, giving himself props. It seemed, it's funny, like, the nature of what I do for a living, time is extremely elastic, and there are moments in my life when it feels like a lot of things happen in a very short period of time, and there are moments in my life when it's the other way around. Or, in some ways, November 2016 feels like a lifetime ago. In some ways, I feel like it was last week. And that's, in a funny way, one of the things I'm sure that's true to some extent of everybody, but there is a sense in which life on the road compresses time. And it's one of the things I enjoy about what I do, because it makes me feel like my life is taking longer to go by, which, given that it is objectively a finite quantity, this is a good thing. So yeah, I mean, it's funny listening to myself from a year ago, but I think I'm in a better place than I was a year ago, so that's good.
Were there any opportunities that came up in the year in question that you said no to that you wish you'd said yes to?
Not off the top of my head. There's a couple of things I said yes to that I wish I said no to, really. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult. There is the nature of my existence is that all day, every day, there's kind of suggestions and ideas for things that I could do with my time, and I do my best to say yes to as many things as possible, because that seems to me to be the way that I have achieved success in my career, is by being relentlessly outgoing and optimistic and saying yes to everything. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Was there anything that you said yes to in the last year that you wish you said no to?
Well, yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, on a private and personal level, there have been some bad decisions here and there, but I mean, overwhelmingly good ones, I think. As I don't want to sound too sort of slushy about this, but things are better than they were a year ago. But there were some nights out and some poor decisions here and there, which I would undo. And then, beyond that, the thing is, I don't particularly want to go into specific detail about this. There's occasionally a gig I do which is just like, why am I here? And I don't want to say what they are, because actually, if I'm ever feeling like that, I've learned to not vocalize it, because usually a couple of days later I go, yeah, that was all right. And if you're helping other people out, or the center of what I do, and as far as I'm an entertainer, is attempt to entertain other people, and if other people are entertained, then it doesn't really matter how I feel about it, to be honest. That's not the central issue. So yeah, I mean, not that I want to talk about.
If you could travel a year back in time and give me now some advice, what would that advice be?
I would tell myself to get on with making changes in my life. I made some pretty hefty changes to my lifestyle and my personal life in the middle of this year, and they were ones that I had been sort of mulling for a long time, and I finally did it, and it was great, and I wish I'd done it sooner. So I tell myself to get the fuck on with that, and I tell myself to get the fuck on with running as well, because I think it is going to make, and I tell myself to quit smoking. So I would do those things. But beyond that, I mean, it's funny, like a question I get asked a lot is like, what advice did you give yourself when you were starting out, or when you were a teenager or whatever? And I sort of feel quite strongly that the interesting part of the passage of time and of life is learning as you go. And I think that there's something slightly kind of wrong-headed about that question in some ways. The one piece of advice I would give my young self when I was starting out is to stretch more, because I've damaged myself so comprehensively physically by refusing to consider what I do to be a form of athletics. And, you know, I broke my back effectively in 2013, and it was utterly horrendous. And I wish that I had thought of myself as an athlete before then, because then I wouldn't have hurt myself so badly. But in the last year, I mean, you know, there are... I'm not sure there is, because I've learned a lot in the last year, and it's been interesting doing that as I did it.
That was Frank. I really loved hearing about how his life has changed over the last year. I couldn't agree any more. As a 30-year-old man who has a lot of friends who are just having their first kid, or in some cases their second kid, I couldn't agree any more with him about how parents say it's amazing and then tell a bunch of stories that completely contradict themselves. I'm so happy that he's worked on himself and he's in a great place, minus the smoking. I don't think he'll mind you telling me that the minute we finished the record, we went outside for an off-mic catch-up and he had a smoke. As always, Frank is on tour, so if you would like to watch him live, you can find the full list of dates at frankturner.com. Check out where he's gigging, and there's also a link in the show notes if you can't be bothered to search the internet for that. If you're new here, please do remember to subscribe. If you're old here, please do remember to give us an honest, ideally positive review in iTunes. If you've got anything negative to say, drop me an email. Don't put that out publicly. And either way, please do join the Facebook group, because we have unique content in there, information about upcoming guests, behind the scenes of the podcast itself, and also each week I ask you a question inspired by some of the questions the guests left, and ask you to leave your answers. This week I'm going to ask you, what habit do you want to kick in 2018? Could be smoking or drinking or eating too much chocolate. I guess what I'm asking is, what is your New Year's resolution? But I really hate that phrase, so I'm trying to avoid it. So what habit would you like to kick if you could kick any habit in 2018? Write it underneath this podcast in the podcast group, and who knows, someone might be doing the same thing and you can support each other. It's a little community we're trying to build in there. The audio time capsule is a Fruit That Got in Gravity's Way production for the internet. All elements were created by me, comedian Simon Kane, except for the music, which was composed by David Jordan. Thank you very much for listening, thank you very much for subscribing, and thank you very much for rating and donating if you do. I'll see you all in about 14 days' time. Bye! And Happy New Year!